from Anshe Sfard Bethel Emeth Congregation. It's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Hebrew grammar, the Shyvana, the mystery of the Shyvana. When we look at Hebrew, we have certain vowels, certain consonants, but there's one vowel which is a mystery. It's the Shyvana, those two annoying dots on the bottom of a word. Take the word hallelu, underneath the lamed, two dots in a vertical fashion. It's a Sheva. It's known as Sheva. It's the two dots which are pronounced as I, Shilomo. The question is, when is it pronounced and when is it not pronounced? When it's pronounced, it's known as a Sheva, na. Na meaning like na vanad, moving, like Cain, who is condemned to be moving around all the time. Na, Shyvana is a moving Sheva. We pronounce it Shilomo. But then there's a Sheva which is not pronounced, and it's known as Sheva nach. It's a silent Sheva. It's a Sheva which is resting. It really doesn't do anything. If it wasn't there, it would be just as good. You don't pronounce it at all. Here we'd like to talk about the Shevaim, which we do pronounce. Shyvana. Teacher a long time ago taught me 5 rules for the Shyvana when you pronounce those two dots. And we can remember it by a mnemonic of Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, He. Aleph stands for the beginning, or like Rosh, the Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the word. At the beginning of a word, if you have two dots under that first letter, you always pronounce it. So take the word Shlomo. Under the shin, you're going to pronounce those two dots. So yes, it's Shilomo. Don't say Shlomo. That may be colloquial, that may be perfectly acceptable out there in the world. But if you want to pronounce it correctly, if you're reading the Shira Shirim, if you're reading Haftarah and they mention Shlomo, it's Shlomo. It's not Shlomo. Shlomo is wrong because it's the wrong accent. It's Shlomo, the accent on the second syllable, as in most Hebrew words. And it's wrong because it's not Shla. There's no such thing as two consonants together in Hebrew. It has to be Shlomo. S-H-E-L-O-M-O. Shilomo. So that's the first rule. The beginning of a word, you always pronounce it. That's the Aleph, the beginning. The beginning of a word, if there's two dots under that letter, pronounce it Shilomo. Second rule is the letter Bet. Bet also in numerology and gematria, Bet is 2. And that reminds us of two things. If there are two Shevaim, two vertical dots, then what you do is, on the second one, again the number 2, the Bet, on the second one you pronounce it. So let's take the word Eshmirah. If I keep. Ki Eshmirah Shabbat. There's a beautiful song on Shabbat. When I keep Shabbat, God will protect me. Ki Eshmirah. So Bet is a sign in two senses. Bet means 2. It's the second letter. If you have 2 Shevaim, one next to the other, Esh, Mirah. The second one is pronounced. 2. If you have 2, pronounce the second. Esh, Mirah. Here you have it. You see the Shin has 2 dots under it, and then the Mem has 2 dots under it. Which one is pronounced? There are 2 in a row, and you pronounce the second one. Then we have the letter Gimel. Gimel stands for Gedolah. After a large vowel, you pronounce the 2 dots after it. If you have a Sheva, those 2 vertical dots, after a letter that had a large vowel, then you're gonna pronounce those 2 dots. It's gonna be a Shyvana. It's gonna sound like I. It's not gonna be silent. Now here's a little tricky. What's considered a large vowel? It's hard to know, right? Well, it's easy. There are four. Shamiru, shamiru, in the Ashkenazic pronunciation. O is a long vowel. Lo midei, the O is a long vowel. Also, A, seravu. Seravu is a long vowel. And here's a little tricky. A yud, a dot underneath with a yud after it. Again, a dot underneath a letter with a yud after it is a long E. You see, if you just have a dot underneath, it's really a short I. If you have a dot underneath a letter with a yud afterward, then it's a long vowel. It's a long E. It's a double E. And therefore, in the word v'yira'u, va'yira'u, v'yira'u, there's a yud with a dot under it, and then another yud to create a long E sound. Then you have two dots, you pronounce it yira'u. Va'yira'u, they saw. V'yira'u, they will see. And this distinguishes the word fear and the word see. In the benching, it's Yiruat Hashem, you should fear God. Va'yira'u means they saw. So we have this vowels of awe after the sound awe, kamatz, T, after that vowel. After the O, that's when you have a dot on top of a letter. O, after the O, lo midei, the next letter, which is a Sheva, is pronounced. After the A sound, seravu, the two dots in a horizontal fashion. And after a long E, that means a dot with a yud after it. After that, you see two dots, pronounce them, yira'u. Now for the Dalet. Dalet stands for digusha. Sometimes you see the two dots under a letter, and that letter has a dot in it. If the letter has a dot in it, and then under that are two dots, is a Sheva, these two vertical dots, then pronounce that Sheva, pronounce that letter. So for instance, adabera, va'adabera, I will speak. There's a dot under the bet. So you pronounce there's two dots under it. Ada, bira. Then the final letter, the hey. Hey doesn't really stand for anything with a hey, but hadomot. Hey is the. Hadomot. Similar letters. Sometimes you have two letters in a row, like hallelu, romimu. So what do you do? How are you going to pronounce it? Hallu? What are you going to do? Hallelu. These two dots will help you distinguish between the two letters. You can't have a double L. You can't say hallelu. There's never two consonants together in Hebrew. So rather it's hallelu. There's a short I. You pronounce the Sheva. Hallelu. That's it. Those are the 5 simple rules of when you pronounce the two vertical dots, the vowel known as Sheva, and it's called a Shyvana, a Sheva that moves. You can hear it, it's not silent. Again, we have 5 rules. Aleph, Barosh Milah, the beginning of a word. Bet, if there are 2, you pronounce the second one. If there are 2 Shevaim, 2 vertical, sets of 2 dots, you pronounce the second one. Gimel, after a long vowel, the long vowels are aw, o, a, e. After those vowels, you pronounce it. Dalet is digusha, stands for dot. If you don't know the Hebrew word dagesh, it could stand for dot. If you see a dot in a letter and there are 2 dots, vertical dots underneath that letter, then you pronounce it. And finally, hadomot. There are 2 similar letters. You have 2 dots under one of the letters. It's to separate between those two similar vowels, similar consonants. And therefore it's halilu. Gives you a sound, a vowel between two similar consonants. Those are the 5 rules. Aren't many rules, you just have to know them well. If you know that, you can pronounce Hebrew in a beautiful fashion, and it'll sound so beautiful. Shilomo, Eshmera, Shamiru, Lomide, Serevu, Yira'u, Adabira, Hallelu. And the Hebrew will roll off your tongue. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshe Sfard Beth El Emet congregation for this grammar moment. Join us each week for our discussion of the Parsha and the various holidays. And thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit ASBEE.org.